Welcome back! In the previous lesson, we talked about components and its properties. However, there was one property that we didn't talk about, and it was variance. So in this video, we are going to talk about the variant property and how you can utilize it properly. So let's dive in. First of all, I'm going to take this button primary component that we created in the previous lesson. I'm going to cut it from this page. I'm going to hit Ctrl X or Command X, and I'm going to bring it right here inside this variance page. I'm going to paste it here, Ctrl V or Command V. And here is our main component. There are times when we need to create different versions of the same component with a slight difference. For example, a button can have different states. We will talk about these later, but just know that a button or any other UI elements can have different states like default, hover, pressed. So what happens when the user hovers over this button? What happens when the user clicks on this button? Usually the appearance of the button should change slightly. So when you want to create variations of the same component, for example, the color could be changed, the size could be changed, etc., you can use the variant property. Let me show you how it works. I'm going to select this button component that we created before. And to create a variant, I can either head over to the toolbar here and click on this add variant button, just like this, and it will create this component set. Or let me just undo it. I can select this component. I can head over to the properties section, hit this plus button, and from here, I can add a variant property to it. The only difference is that when you use this method, Figma won't duplicate this primary button, all right? You can go ahead and duplicate it by yourself. But when you use this method, when you use this icon here, as soon as it creates this component set, it will also duplicate this component and it will create a new variant. As you can see, we have primary and variant 2. This is the main difference between these two methods, but apart from that, nothing else is different. All right, so here we have this component set and it's called button. Inside this component set, we have a few variants. We have the primary variant and we have variant 2. When you create a component set using this method, what you're doing is basically adding a variant property to these components, to these copies of your main component. So here, if I select this component set, as you can see, this property 1 has been added to all the properties that we previously added to this component. You can go ahead and rename it to whatever you want, but this is basically a variant property. So here, I'm going to rename it to state, as I'm going to change the state of this button. And now if I go ahead and select the variants inside, as you can see here, this current variant has one property, this state property. Don't confuse variant properties with the component properties because they might seem similar, but there is a difference between them. Here, each variant has a variant property that we just created, okay, that we added to this component set, but also these components have component properties that we previously added to these components. And when you select this component set, you'll see all the properties here, the component properties that we previously added, and also this variant property that also belongs to this component. But when we select these variants individually, we only see the variant properties. All right, so now if I select this primary variant, as you can see, the state is set to primary. I'm going to change it to default. And now if I select the second variant, as you can see, the value is set to variant 2. So I'm going to change this one to hover, just like that. And now I can go ahead and modify the appearance of this hover variant. So if I head over to the fill section, what I'm going to do is click on this plus icon to add an overlay fill layer to this fill section. Just like this. As soon as I do that, this new layer is going to be created and it's basically a black fill with a 20% opacity. So what I'm going to do is change this color to white since this is the hover state. I am going to make it brighter rather than darker. And now I'm going to create another variant. To create another variant, you can simply select this one or the main one, it doesn't matter. I'm going to select this one and I'm going to duplicate it, hit Ctrl D or Command D. Or you can just select this one and click on this plus icon. just like this. So again, now it's asking us to set a value for this state property. This time I'm gonna type pressed. This is gonna be our pressed state. And I'm gonna go ahead and change this fill to black. I'm gonna make it darker. Maybe I can increase the opacity to 40. And now this button component has 3 different variants. But how can you use these variants? It's simple. If you head over to assets and from here you look for your components, if I just drag an instance of it and drop it right here, you'll see that apart from these properties that we previously added to this component, now we have this variant property as well. It's called state. I can change it to hover, I can change it to pressed, and I can get back to default. The good thing about this is that I can just set it to hover, for instance, or pressed, and then I can also customize these values. For example, I can just remove the icon or change the text, just like this, or swap the icon. So basically this component set, or let's say variants, allow you to organize all your components within one simple container. So up until now, we created a one-dimensional component set because here this component set only has one variant property, the state. The only thing that changes is the appearance of these buttons, the color, right? Now imagine you want to change something else as well, maybe the size of these buttons. In that case, you need to create a multi-dimensional component set, and it's so easy to do. Here, I'm gonna select this component set, this button component set, and I'm gonna make it a little bit larger, just like this. And I'm gonna select these 3 states, these 3 variants, and I'm gonna duplicate them. Hit Ctrl D or Command D. And here, as you can see, we have state 4, state 5, state 6, but we are not gonna add more states to this button. Instead, we are gonna change its size. So we need to add another property to this component set. How can we do that? It's so simple. Let me just move them right here. I'm not gonna set the values here because, as I said, we are gonna create a new property called size. So I'm gonna select the component set and I'm gonna click on this plus icon and I'm gonna click on variant to create a new variant property. Just like this. The name is gonna be size and the value can be medium. This is gonna be the medium size. I'm gonna hit create property. Just like that. And now we created another variant property. Now we need to select these variants and check the values of these properties. So the states are fine. The size is medium. That's also fine. What about these? I'm going to select this. The state should be default. This one should be hover. This one should be pressed. And now Figma says the properties and values of this variant are conflicting. Change the applied values on this variant to resolve this. The reason is these variants have the exact same properties and values as these variants. So now we need to modify the size value for these variants. I'm going to change it to small. For this one as well, you can just select them both and change the value to small. And now that warning is gone. All right, so now we have these 2 properties. However, now we need to select these new variants and just change their size. So what I'm gonna do is decrease the padding here. I'm gonna decrease the vertical padding to 8 and the horizontal padding to 16. You can modify the font size as well, but I'm not gonna do that at the moment. It's fine. All right, we are ready to check it out. If I select this instance of this button that we already created, you can see that now we have the size property as well. So let me change the state to default. It should have an icon. The text is button, that's fine. Now I'm gonna make it small. So I can open up this drop-down menu and I can change it to small. Just like this, you'll get the small variant of this button with all the other properties. You can still modify these properties, the values of these properties, the text, you can switch the icon on or off, etc. Now I want you to go ahead and add 3 more variants to this component set, and these variants are going to be the larger buttons. So here we have the medium buttons, we have the small buttons, now we need the large buttons. Please pause the video, go ahead and do that by yourself, and then we'll do it together. Alright, I hope you could do it by yourself. Now let's do it together in case you faced any issues. So I'm gonna select these three variants again. We don't need to add another property because we are just changing the size property. We just need to duplicate these variants. I'm gonna duplicate them, hit Ctrl D or Command D. I'm gonna enlarge this component set to keep everything organized like that. And let's move these to the right. And these can be placed right here. Okay, so far so good. Now we need to go ahead and change the property values of these three variants. Okay, for this first one, the size property should be large. For these two as well, so I'm gonna select them both and I'm gonna change it to large. All right, now let's select them all, these three variants. And I'm going to change their padding here. I'm going to change the vertical padding to 16 and the horizontal padding to 32. And now if I select the instance of this button, we can change its size to large as well. One thing you can do to keep everything organized is add labels to your component set. So here I'm going to create a text layer, but make sure that this text layer is outside your component set. And I'm going to type large. I'm going to place it right here. I'm going to duplicate it, move it to the right side. This one is going to be named medium and duplicate it, move it to the right. And this one is going to be small. Now I'm going to duplicate this one, bring it right here. And I'm going to type default, just like this, duplicate it, bring it down. This one is going to be hover. Duplicate it, bring it down, and this one is gonna be pressed. So this way you can easily understand what's going on. This approach is especially good when you have many different variants. Imagine you have hundreds of different variants in a component set with different sizes, with different states. Maybe some of them have larger icons, some of them have smaller icons. This way you can make sure that everything is neat and organized.